The horizon drifted silently through the darkness of uncharted space. Its silver hull gleamed under the light of an unfamiliar star system that no human eyes had seen before. On the bridge, Captain Morgan tapped her fingers against the control panel, waiting for the preliminary scans to complete. "Sir, we're picking up unusual readings from the third planet," said Officer Bell, his eyes fixed on the monitor. "Biosignatures unlike anything in our database." Lieutenant James Reed looked up from his station. As the ship's senior xenobiologist, unusual life forms were his specialty. "Request permission to lead a ground team, Captain." Morgan turned to face him. "Those readings concern me, Reed. We don't know what's down there." "That's precisely why we came all this way," James replied with a smile that didn't quite hide his excitement. 4 hours later, James stepped onto the surface of the alien world. The air was thick but breathable, the gravity slightly heavier than Earth standard. Around him, 5 other crew members scanned the surroundings. Tall purple vegetation swayed in the gentle breeze, and strange bird-like creatures darted through the canopy above. "Keep your eyes open," James instructed the team. "And remember, we observe only. No interaction with the wildlife." The team moved deeper into the forest. Their scanners picked up increasingly complex life signs, but nothing that suggested advanced intelligence. As the day progressed, they discovered tracks, massive claw marks on trees, and disturbed soil that hinted at something large. "Whatever made these is big," said Technician Wilson, crouching beside a footprint nearly twice the size of his hand. "I'd guess a predator." James nodded, taking samples and images. "The apex predator of this ecosystem, I'd wager." That evening, as the team set up camp, their communications officer received a message from the ship. The captain's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. "Reed, we've received warnings from Galactic Central. This region is called the Forbidden Zone by several species. They warn of something they call the Devourers. I want you back on the ship by morning." James frowned. "Captain, we've just started our exploration." "That's an order, Lieutenant. Something has multiple spacefaring civilizations scared of this place. I won't risk my crew." Later that night, a storm rolled in. Lightning flashed across the sky and thunder shook the ground. James, unable to sleep, decided to collect one last set of samples before their departure. He moved away from camp, telling himself he wouldn't go far. The rain grew heavier and visibility dropped. James realized he had wandered farther than intended when he heard a sound, a low growl that rose above the storm. He froze, his hand moving slowly toward his stunner. The bushes parted, and a creature emerged. It stood on 2 powerful legs, its body covered in dark scales that shifted color like oil on water. 6 amber eyes fixed on James, and razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the flash of lightning. James knew he should run. Every instinct screamed danger. But then he noticed something. A deep gash across the creature's side, leaking the blue fluid. The creature was injured, and in its eyes, beyond the predatory focus, he saw something unmistakable: pain. The creature made a sound, not the growl from before, but something softer. It swayed, struggling to remain upright. Against all training and common sense, James took a step forward, not away. The creature tilted its head, confusion evident in its posture. "You're hurt," James said softly, knowing the words meant nothing to the creature, but hoping his tone might convey his intent. To his astonishment, the creature lowered itself to the ground, those 6 eyes never leaving him. It made another sound, almost like a whimper. James took another step forward, then another. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached what might be the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. But something told him this meeting was important, perhaps the most important first contact in human history. The rain continued to pour as James knelt beside the wounded creature. Up close, its breathing came in labored hisses. The gash along its side looked deep, possibly infected. "I want to help you," James whispered, slowly reaching into his pack for his medical kit. The creature's 6 amber eyes tracked his every movement. When James pulled out a scanner, it growled softly. James froze, then deliberately showed the device before activating it. Just checking your wound. Not going to hurt you. The scanner revealed complex biology, unlike anything in James's experience. The creature's blood contained properties both reptilian and mammalian, with cellular structures that shifted and adapted even as he washed. Making a decision that violated every protocol in the book, James applied a universal healing gel to the wound. The creature flinched at first, then relaxed as the pain-relieving compounds took effect. "I think I'll call you Vex," James said softly. "Short for vexing problem, which is what you're going to be for me." As if understanding, the creature made a clicking sound that almost resembled a laugh. Dawn approached. James's communicator buzzed urgently. "Reed, where the hell are you?" came Captain Morgan's voice. "We're evacuating in 30 minutes. "On my way," James replied, looking at Vex. The creature seemed stronger already, the wound already beginning to heal at an impossible rate. "I have to go," he told Vex, feeling foolish for talking to an alien predator. "But I'll try to come back." To his surprise, Vex reached out one clawed hand and touched James's arm, not to harm, but with unexpected gentleness. Those amber eyes blinked in sequence, almost like a farewell. Back at camp, chaos reigned. The team packed hastily while casting nervous glances at the forest. "Where were you?" Dr. Parker demanded, shoving equipment into a case. "Taking final samples," James lied, pocketing a vial of the blue fluid he'd collected from Vex's wound. Captain's furious. Galactic Central sent more messages. Apparently this planet is home to something called the Nex. They're supposed to be the most dangerous predators in known space. James felt his pulse quicken. Dangerous how? Ancient records describe them as mind readers. They sense fear, then hunt you down. Entire colonies were wiped out centuries ago. On the shuttle back to the horizon, James sat quietly, thinking about the creature he'd named Vex. A mind reader. It had seemed intelligent, certainly, but also vulnerable. Not the mindless killer from the stories. For the next 3 days, James secretly analyzed the sample he'd taken. The results shocked him. Vex's DNA contained structures associated with empathic abilities. Not mind-reading exactly, but perhaps emotional sensing, explaining how the Nix had been such effective hunters. More surprisingly, Vex's neural patterns suggested high-level intelligence. "Lieutenant Reeb to the bridge," came the announcement, interrupting his research. Captain Morgan looked grim when James arrived. "We've been ordered to leave this system immediately. The Galactic Council has declared the entire planet quarantined." "On what grounds?" James asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Protection of all sentient life," Morgan replied. "The Nix are considered too dangerous for contact." That night, as the Horizon prepared for departure, James made the most reckless decision of his career. He took a shuttle, claiming a need to retrieve critical research equipment left at the landing site. Instead, he flew to where he had met Vex. The creature was waiting, as if it had sensed his return. "I can't leave you here," James said, heart pounding. "Not with the Council declaring this planet off-limits. They'll never understand what you really are." Vex made a series of clicks and growls, then gestured toward the shuttle. "Yes," James nodded. "Come with me. I'm breaking about 50 regulations, but I think you're worth it." As they flew back to the Horizon, James knew his career might be over. But looking at Vex, intelligent, curious, and nothing like the monster of legend, he felt certain he was making the right choice. Smuggling the galaxy's most feared predator onto a human vessel was either the bravest or most foolish thing any human had ever done. James's quarters had never felt smaller. Vex crouched in the corner, those 6 amber eyes taking in every detail of the human living space. The creature had shown remarkable calmness during their secret journey from the shuttle bay to James's room, moving with silent grace despite its size. "Computer, privacy mode," James ordered. The cabin lights dimmed automatically, and the monitoring systems went into standby, a standard feature for crew personal time, but now being used for something far from standard. "You'll need to stay quiet," James told Vex, knowing the creature couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone conveyed the message. Vex tilted its head, then made a soft clicking sound before settling lower to the floor, almost as if nodding agreement. For 3 days, James managed to keep his secret. He brought extra food rations to his room, claiming he was working on research. Vex ate everything offered, showing special preference for protein packs. More surprisingly, the creature began mimicking James's gestures and attempts to communicate. By the 4th day, Vex could understand basic hand signals. By the 5th, it began making sounds that imperfectly copied some of James's words. "Home," Vex managed on the 6th day, the word rough but recognizable. James nearly dropped his datapad in shock. "You can speak." "Learn. Quick," Vex replied, those amber eyes blinking in sequence. James spent every free moment with the creature, teaching it words and concepts. Vex's ability to absorb language was unlike anything James had encountered in his stenobiology career. But their time was running out. Environmental anomaly detected in Lieutenant Reed's quarters announced the ship's computer during ship-wide diagnostics. Unauthorized life-form signatures present. James was in the lab when the alert sounded. He rushed toward his quarters, heart pounding. When he arrived, Dr. Parker was already at his door, override code in hand. "James, what's going on?" The computer detected. Parker stopped mid-sentence as the door slid open to reveal Vex standing in the center of the room. Parker stumbled backward, reaching for his sidearm. "What in the 7 systems is that?" "Aelin, wait." James stepped between them. "This is Vex, the creature from the planet. Are you insane?" Parker hissed, keeping his weapon raised. "That's a nix. Do you know what those things can do?" "I'm learning what they can do," James insisted. "Vex is intelligent, Alan. More intelligent than any non-human species we've encountered." "Friend," Vex said clearly, making both men freeze. "James' friend." Parker's hand trembled. "It talks. He talks. He learns, and everything we've been told about the Nix is wrong," James said. "They're empaths. They can sense emotions across species. That's why they were such effective hunters in the past. But they've evolved." Security alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Captain Morgan's voice came over the communication system. "All security personnel to Deck C, possible containment breach." "You've got about 2 minutes before security arrives," Parker warned, lowering his weapon slightly. "What's your plan?" James had none. He looked at Vex, who seemed to sense his distress. "Hide me," Vex suggested, then pointed to the ceiling vents. Before they could act, a violent shudder ran through the ship. The lights flickered and emergency alarms joined the security alerts. "All hands, emergency stations." Captain Morgan's voice returned, tinged with urgency. "Coolant leak detected in engineering." Parker's communicator chirped. "Dr. Parker to engineering immediately. Possible radiation exposure to crew." Parker looked at James, then at Vex. "This isn't over. But I've got wounded to treat." After Parker left, James turned to Vex. "We need to hide you." Vex shook its scaled head. "No. Help." The creature pointed toward engineering. "Sense danger, not coolant. Power core. Breaking." James stared. "You can sense that from here." Vex nodded. "Feel ship pain." Making a decision that could either save the ship or end in disaster, James motioned for Vex to follow him. "Come on. If you're right about the power core, everyone on this ship is in danger." They slipped into the corridor, moving against the flow of crew rushing to emergency stations. The Horizon's fate now rested on James's trust in a creature that every spacefaring species feared more than death itself. The chaos in engineering masked their entrance. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, and warning lights bathed the room in pulsing red. Engineers shouted over the alarms, their faces slick with sweat as they worked frantically at control panels. James felt Vex tense beside him. The creature's scales shifted color, darkening to match the shadows. "There," Vex whispered, pointing to a section of the power core that appeared undamaged to human eyes. Breaking inside. Chief Engineer Thorne spotted them first. Her eyes widened, and she fumbled for her communicator. "Security breach. The Nix." "Wait." James stepped forward, hands raised. "He can help. He can sense the problem." "Are you out of your mind?" "Reed?" Thorne backed away. "That thing shouldn't be on this ship." Vex moved forward, ignoring the frightened engineer. Its 6 eyes focused intently on the power core housing. "Metal fatigue. Microfractures. Here." Vex placed a clawed hand against a seemingly intact panel. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The lights failed completely before emergency power kicked in. 2 minutes to core breach, announced the computer in its emotionless voice. "Let him try," James pleaded. "If he's wrong, we're no worse off." Thorne hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Do it." Vex moved with surprising speed, climbing the core housing with fluid grace. Its claws delicately peeled back an access panel, revealing a network of glowing conduits. The creature reached inside, adjusting something the humans couldn't see. The alarms suddenly silenced. The warning lights stopped flashing. "Core stabilizing," reported the computer. "Danger level reduced." A moment of stunned silence filled engineering. Then a security team burst through the doors, weapons raised. "Step away from the alien," ordered Security Chief Reeves. Before James could protest, Captain Morgan pushed through the security team. Her face hardened at the sight of Vex, still perched on the core housing. "Lieutenant Reed, you are under arrest for endangering this vessel and its crew," she declared. "And that creature is to be contained immediately." "Captain, Vex just saved the ship," James argued as security officers moved to restrain him. "The core was failing at a molecular level. None of our sensors could detect it." "I go," Vex said clearly, surprising everyone. "Not hurt, James." The creature descended from the core housing and stood still, allowing security officers to approach with restraint equipment. "Captain," Chief Engineer Thorne stepped forward reluctantly. "The alien did locate a microfracture in the core containment system. Our diagnostics wouldn't have found it until too late." The news spread quickly through the ship. By the time James was escorted to the brig, the crew had divided into factions. Some demanded Vex's immediate execution, while others argued for study and communication. In the ship's conference room, the senior staff debated heatedly. "The Galactic Council has been clear," argued Reeves. "The Nix are to be terminated on sight. They're too dangerous to exist." "Based on what?" Dr. Parker challenged. "Encounters from thousands of years ago. The creature saved this ship." "It's a trick," Reeves insisted. "The Nix hunt by gaining trust, then striking." Captain Morgan listened silently, her expression revealing nothing. Finally, she silenced the debate with a raised hand. "We've received direct orders from the Council," she announced. "The Nix is to be terminated immediately as a threat to galactic security." In the brig, James paced his cell. The door slid open to admit Dr. Parker. "They're going to kill Vex," Parker said without preamble. James gripped the cell bars. "They can't. He's intelligent, peaceful." "I know," Parker cut him off. "I ran tests on the samples you collected. The Nix have evolved. Their brain structures show development of higher reasoning centers that would inhibit predatory instincts. So they've changed since the ancient encounters." Parker nodded. "Evolved, just as we evolved from violent primates. But the Council won't listen." "Where is Vex now?" "Isolation chamber, heavily guarded." Parker lowered his voice. "Something else. There's a faction of the crew that believes Vex should be protected. They're planning something." James stared at his friend. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that history is about to be made," Parker replied. and you need to decide which side of it you want to be on. The ship-wide alarm jolted James awake in his cell. Red emergency lights pulsed through the corridor as the deck tilted sharply beneath him. "All hands, battle stations," Captain Morgan's voice commanded over the speakers. Unidentified vessels approaching at attack speed. The brig door slid open. Dr. Parker rushed in, breathing hard. "We've got company. Galactic enforcement vessels. They're demanding we surrender the Nix." "How did they find us so quickly?" James asked as Parker deactivated his cell. "Someone sent a message. Doesn't matter now." Parker handed James a sidearm. "Vex has been moved. Engineering crew are protecting him." They hurried through corridors crowded with rushing crew members. The ship shuddered as something struck the outer hull. "Warning shot," explained Parker. "They're ordering us to power down and prepare for boarding." They reached the bridge just as Captain Morgan was responding to the transmission. Her face showed no emotion, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the command chair. "This is Captain Morgan of the Horizon. We are a research vessel on a sanctioned mission. State your authority for this interception." A stern face appeared on the main screen. "Enforcement Commander Voss. By order of the Galactic Council, you will surrender the Nix specimen and all personnel involved in its capture. Failure to comply will result in immediate disabling of your vessel." James stepped forward. "Captain, you can't." Morgan raised a hand to silence him, then, to everyone's surprise, cut the transmission. "Plot a course for the Cressida Nebula," she ordered the navigation officer. "Captain." The officer looked stunned. "That's a dead zone. Navigation systems fail inside the nebula." "Precisely." Morgan turned to face James. "Lieutenant Reed, against my better judgment, I'm not surrendering your friend. But I need something from you." "Anything, Captain. You've spent the most time with the creature. Can it help us navigate the nebula?" James felt a surge of hope. Vex can sense things our instruments can't detect. If anyone can guide us through, he can. Morgan nodded once. "Get the Nix to auxiliary control. And understand this, I'm risking my ship and career because I've seen enough to doubt the Council's orders. Don't make me regret this." As the Horizon accelerated away from the enforcement vessels, more ships appeared on the long-range scanners. 7 new contacts, reported the tactical officer. Multiple species signatures. Kaltar, Vreen, and Osperin vessels. "Everyone with an ancient grudge against the Nix," muttered Parker. In auxiliary control, Vex stood beside James, watching the tactical display. The creature's scales rippled with colors that seemed to match the tension in the room. "They hunt us," Vex observed, "like my ancestors hunted theirs." "Can you help us navigate the nebula?" James asked. "Our sensors won't work once we're inside." Vex nodded. "Feel paths. Energy flows. Can show safe way." The Horizon plunged into the nebula's swirling gases. As predicted, the navigation systems immediately began to fail. Static filled the communication channels. "Targeting systems offline," reported Tactical. "We're flying blind." "Not blind," said Vex, stepping toward the navigation console. The creature placed its clawed hands on the dead controls. "I see paths." For the next 3 hours, Vex guided the ship through the nebula's treacherous currents. Twice, pursuing ships ventured after them, only to retreat with damage from the nebula's energy discharges. James watched in amazement as Vex directed them with perfect confidence, sensing dangers before they appeared and finding safe routes where none seemed to exist. "How are you doing this?" James asked during a quiet moment. "My people evolved to sense prey through solid rock. In complete darkness," Vex explained, its command of human language improving by the hour. "This is similar. Energy has taste. Danger smells sharp." When they finally emerged from the far side of the nebula, the pursuing fleet was nowhere to be seen. "We've lost them," announced Tactical with relief. Vex turned to James, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Not lost. Delayed. They will come." "Where can we go?" James asked. The entire galaxy seems to be hunting us. Vex's gaze fixed on a distant point beyond the view screen. My home world. Only place safe for us now. James stared at his alien friend. You want us to go to the next home world? The most feared planet in the galaxy. Yes, said Vex simply. Time for truth. Time for humans to meet my people. Captain Morgan stared at James as if he had suggested they fly directly into a star. The bridge fell silent as crew members held their breath, waiting for her response. The next home world, Morgan finally said. No human has ever seen it and lived to tell about it. Vex stepped forward, its scales shifting to a calm blue hue. My people, not what you think. Not monsters. We changed. Captain, James added, the pursuing fleet will expect us to flee toward human space. They won't anticipate us heading deeper into the forbidden zone. Morgan's eyes narrowed. And if this is a trap, if this creature is luring us to its home world for slaughter, then I've doomed us all, James admitted. But Vex has had multiple opportunities to harm us and chose instead to save the ship. Dr. Parker joined them, datapad in hand. My analysis of Vex's biology shows evolutionary changes consistent with higher reasoning development. The Nyx of today are not the same as those in ancient records. The tactical officer interrupted. Captain, sensors show the pursuit fleet regrouping. They're scanning for our ion trail. Morgan closed her eyes briefly, weighing impossible choices. When she opened them, her resolve was clear. Set course for the next homeworld. Maximum speed. 3 days later, the horizon approached a star system hidden behind a dense asteroid field. The ship slowed as they navigated the treacherous path Vex indicated. Sensors show a habitable planet, reported the science officer. Atmosphere similar to Earth, but with higher oxygen content. As they entered orbit, everyone gathered at viewports and screens. Below them spread a world of striking beauty. Vast forests of purple and blue vegetation, gleaming cities built into mountain ranges, and sprawling structures that seemed to merge with the natural landscape. It's advanced, whispered Parker in awe. My people chose harmony with nature, Vex explained. Technology serves life, not replaces. James noticed something else. There are no weapons arrays, no planetary defenses. No need, said Vex. No one comes here. All fear us. The horizon received a transmission from the surface, a series of musical tones and clicks. Vex responded in the same language, the sound strange coming from its throat. They welcome us, Vex translated. First visitors in 500 years. The landing was met with both ceremony and caution. A delegation of Nyx waited as the Horizon's shuttle touched down in a circular plaza surrounded by towering structures that seemed grown rather than built. James was the first human to step onto the Nyx world. The air felt rich and sweet in his lungs. Around him stood 24 Nyx, their scales displaying a rainbow of colors. They were similar to Vex, but with subtle variations in size and features. One Nyx stepped forward, its scales a deep purple with gold patterns. 6 eyes studied James intently. I am Elder Meyer, it said in perfect English, shocking the human delegation. We have learned your language from Vex's transmissions. Welcome to Nyxara. Captain Morgan stepped forward and offered a formal greeting. We come seeking sanctuary. We are pursued by those who misunderstand your kind. Elder Meyer nodded slowly. For millennia, we have lived in isolation, knowing how the galaxy fears us. Our ancestors were indeed fearsome hunters, but evolution changed us as it changes all life. The humans were escorted to a vast chamber within the largest structure. Inside, a council of Nyx sat in a circular arrangement. Images projected in the center showed the pursuing fleet, now approaching the outer reaches of the system. They come with weapons ready, observed Elder Meyer. They expect savagery, so they bring savagery with them. What will you do? James asked. We will not fight, answered Elder Meyer. Violence is no longer our way, but we cannot surrender one of our own. James stepped into the center of the council circle. Then let me speak to them. Let me show them what I've learned, that the greatest predators in galactic history have become something even more remarkable. Vex moved to stand beside James. We stand together. Friend and Nyx. Show new possibility. Elder Meyer studied them both, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. In all our history, no other species has stood with the Nyx. This human's courage honors us. As the pursuing fleet entered orbit, James prepared for the most important diplomatic mission in human history, defending the species that all others feared. The great council chamber of Nyxara had been transformed into a meeting hall. Representatives from 12 different species sat in tense silence, weapons kept close despite promises of peace. The air felt thick with ancient fears and fresh suspicions. James stood at the center of the chamber, Vex at his side. Facing them were the leaders of the galactic fleet, Commander Voss of Enforcement, Admiral Zik of the Kalteri, and others whose species had grievances with the Nyx stretching back millennia. This gathering violates multiple treaty provisions, began Commander Voss, his gray skin flushed with anger. The Nyx are quarantined by galactic decree. Decrees based on encounters from thousands of years ago, James replied calmly. Before any of us were born, before our ancestors were born. Admiral Zik, her feathered crest rising in agitation, hissed, "My world still bears the scars of Nyx hunting parties. Entire cities abandoned, generations of nightmares." Vex stepped forward. The assembled delegates tensed, hands moving to weapons. "Your pain is real," Vex said, surprising them with perfect galactic standard. "My ancestors caused great suffering. We remember this shame." Elder Meyer joined them. 5,000 years ago, we made a choice. Our evolution had given us intelligence beyond our predatory instincts. We chose to change, to grow, to become more than hunters. Convenient claims, sneered a Vreen representative, mandibles clicking. Yet you hide on your world, concealing yourselves. Because of exactly this reaction, James pointed out. Would any of you have believed without seeing? You came here with warships, not diplomatic vessels. James activated a holographic display showing the medical and biological data Dr. Parker had collected. This evidence shows definitive evolutionary changes. The Nyx brain has developed regions associated with empathy, abstract thought, and impulse control, the same evolutionary path humans and many of your species followed. Commander Voss studied the data with reluctant interest. Even if true, how can we trust creatures evolved to sense our emotions and exploit our weaknesses? Vex's scales shifted to a calm blue pattern. What was once used to hunt now helps us understand. Feel this truth. The Nyx extended a clawed hand toward the center of the room. The air seemed to shimmer as Vex focused, eyes glowing softly. "What is happening?" demanded Admiral Zik, half rising from her seat. "He's projecting," explained James. "Not controlling, not invading, sharing his emotional state." The Nyx developed this ability to communicate with each other. It's how they built their peaceful society. A wave of calm certainty washed over the chamber. Many delegates gasped, experiencing for the first time the direct emotional honesty of the Nyx. "This is not what I expected," admitted Commander Voss, his rigid posture relaxing slightly. Elder Meyer stepped forward. "For too long, we have lived apart, healing our own society, transforming what we once were. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to know us as we truly are." "We propose a treaty," James said. "Controlled cultural exchange. Scientific cooperation. The Nyx have medical and ecological knowledge that could benefit all species. In return, they ask only for recognition and the end of their isolation." Hours of debate followed. Ancient fears did not disappear in a day, but curiosity began to replace suspicion. The Vreen, historically the most hostile toward the Nyx, were the first to express interest in their advanced biological sciences. As the formal treaty was drafted, James found a quiet moment with Vex outside the chamber. The twin suns of Nyxara were setting, painting the sky in brilliant purple and gold. "Your people will be known for something more than fear now," James said. Vex's scales rippled with colors that James had learned to recognize as happiness. "And your people will be known for courage." One human who saw beyond fear changed everything. Captain Morgan approached them, datapad in hand. "The Galactic Council is requesting that we establish the first permanent diplomatic mission to Nyxara. They're asking for volunteers to stay." James looked at his friend Vex, then at the beautiful alien world around them. "I think they already have their first volunteer." As darkness fell across Nyxara, humans and Nyx gathered together under the stars. Where once had been only fear and isolation, now stood the beginning of understanding. All because one human had chosen to help rather than run when faced with the galaxy's most feared predator. Sometimes, James thought as Vex pointed out constellations visible only from this world, the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't what hunts you, but what you fail to understand.